the point of it is, and what I'm looking at today is, what can we do? What is our part in this? Well, ultimately it's to believe, but what does it mean to believe? Well, in a specific, more practical sense, he tells us to look at something and keep looking at it. Look at it and keep looking at it, because that changes the way we think. And as we look and keep looking, he says, this is his promise, we're changed into that same image, from glory to glory. Now, the temptation is to be distracted by what's on the outside. Because here's the sad fact. Just because we're Christians and just because we have all this glory on the inside does not mean that we instantly and overnight reveal all of that on the outside. And it doesn't mean that we don't, because we're in this body of flesh, make some mistakes and do some things wrong and do some regrettable things and say some things, wish I hadn't said that. See, and what the temptation is to be distracted by all those little things. But see, if we get distracted, it takes our attention away from what we got to keep looking at. See, we're supposed to keep looking at what's on the inside, because that's what transforms us. Now, I was just thinking before church, it's been a long time. It reminded me while we drove by our house there, we've got this little row of trees on the north side of our house. And I know if you've been here more than 6 months, you've probably heard this story, but it reminds me of this little story about the trees that are on the north side of our house. And this is when we had 3 boys, Elliot, Anton, and Phil. And April went out to Walmart, and my recollection was that these trees were on sale, but she says no, they weren't on sale. And now I'm thinking, why did she buy them if they weren't on sale? but my recollection was she picked up these trees at Walmart because they were on sale. But now I was talking to her, she said no, they weren't on sale. Anyway, the bottom line is she took the boys out to Walmart and said, we're all going to pick out a tree. And so everybody picks out their own tree. Well, Elliot picked out this apple tree. So here she comes home. This is before we had that white SUV. We had a blue van then. In the back of the van were these 3 trees, quote, quote, so-called trees. And really, if you ask me, when I got them out of the back, of course, my job, get them out and lug them over and dig the hole. And that's my job, all the hard work. But anyway, I pulled these so-called trees. To me, a better description would be a stick in a burlap bag of dirt. And really, it was just about like a broom handle, if you can imagine a broom handle stuck into a dirt wrapped up with burlap. And they did not look much like trees. They looked basically dead. I thought you've bought some dead sticks here. They're not very appealing, not very exciting. And what really made me laugh was the one Elliot picked out, the apple tree, so-called. The apple tree, it had this picture on the tag, and you should have seen this tag. It said apple tree. That's how we knew what it was, apple tree. And I had this picture on the tag of this beautiful apple tree with all these branches like this and apples just hanging all over it. And I looked at the tag, and I looked at the so-called tree, and I looked at the tag, and something's not right here. This tree does not look like what it's supposed to be, in my estimation. Well, what was I going to do? I went ahead, dug the hole, planted the trees. See, I planted the trees into the ground like they're supposed to be, and then watered the trees every day, so-called trees. They didn't look too exciting, and it's still, I'm thinking to myself, maybe she did tell me they're on sale just because they look so bad. In my mind, and then I find out now they weren't even on sale. Full price for these things. Anyway, it didn't look very exciting. And it would have been tempting to be discouraged about it, But there was the tag telling... Now see, after I planted them and watered them for a while, a week later, what if I'd come back? What if I'd planted them, let's say, on a Sunday, and I came back next Sunday? No real change that I could see. I'd be tempted to say, what's wrong here? Something's not right. But see, I would be judging wrongly, wouldn't I? Wouldn't I? Because what that tag tells me, what that little printed tag tells me, it's telling me something about the nature of that tree. Even though it didn't seem to reflect it on the outside, it's telling me what it really is by nature, by essence on the inside. And even though it didn't seem like it originally in the beginning, it's telling me that there is a life on the inside of that tree that, given time and growth, and if I'll water it, and do my part. And there again, that's another thing. What if I came back 3 months later, 4 months later, and didn't, and which is true, I did. 6 months later, didn't look much different. What if I got mad at that tree? Why, where is the fruit? I'm going to threaten it a little bit. Where is it? Shake it, Come on, tree. You ought to have some fruit by now. What if I'd been like, well, first of all, I'd be stupid, wouldn't it? Yeah. But the tag tells me what's really true about that tree on the inside. That tree DNA, if I can say it that way. The life that is in that tree. So I water the tree, I nurture the tree, water the tree. If any weeds come up, try to get rid of those. Grass, and just try to keep it, give it the best, that's really all. I just nurture it, water it. Did you know that Paul tells us as Christians, we are God's, King James says, husbandry. Another translation says God's garden. We are God's garden. Paul says, I planted, Apollos watered, God gave the increase. You ever read that? What he's saying is, it's basically like that we are like those trees I'm talking about. And when we come to church every day, you might say, well, why do we come to church every week? Well, one thing is, you don't see it, but I'm going around with a watering can, and I'm watering, hopefully, nurturing the life that's on the inside of you, see? And me too. It's not that I'm exempt. Me too. I need it just as much, maybe more than you. We're watering, you see, we're nurturing the life that He planted on the inside of us. We couldn't do it. He did it. But it's there by by virtue of our union with Christ. So, the purpose for reading the Bible, the purpose for looking into God's mirror, the purpose for meeting together is to nurture that life that's on the inside. A year later, tree is a little bigger, the stick is longer. No fruit. 2 years later. And I hesitate to tell you this because I don't want you to get discouraged. But see, the reason I'm telling it like this is we sell ourselves so short. We're so impatient. But see, we've got to believe. See, the tag that told me what the tree was, this is the equivalent of it. This is the tag that tells us what the real life is that's on the inside of us. And we can't be discouraged because we don't see everything happen instantly and overnight. We just got to keep looking. Did I read it right? Oh, it was James that said, he that looks into the perfect law of liberty, remember this word, and continues. Now, when he says continues, that tells me that it's going to be a process. That tells me it's not going to be an instant change overnight. I would have liked that, basically. I would have actually liked that. If it was instantly everything changed. I remember when I was a brand new Christian, it did kind of discourage me that it wasn't total transformation instantly overnight. I was a little bit discouraged about that. That got me down for a while. I wish there was somebody like me to come and tell me what I'm telling you right now. Oh, those trees, yeah. 2 years later. Now, this is kind of sad. No fruit. It's getting longer. It's getting tough. And I finally quit counting how many years. It took a process of really a few years. And I don't know if you remember, some of you might have, the first day I saw a tiny little apple appear on that one little scrawny apple. Not much to get excited, but it made me excited because here is the first fruit, the first evidence that there is really the life on the inside of that tree. And instead of even letting it get full size, I just plucked it off and brought it down here. And I remember coming in here on Sundays, look, this is the fruit of that tree. It was so exciting to me. Well, now we're coming to church this morning, and do you remember, Elliot? There's fruit all over it. I mean, it's huge. They're green apples, the kind you have to, cook. Yeah. Still, though, I see these kids walk down the street. I look out the window. They pull them off the tree and take a bite. And they don't know any better. But anyway, there's fruit all over it. Plenty of fruit for all the kids that walk down the street. There's so much fruit that it's falling all over the ground. And I mean, it's just fruitful. Well, what did the tree do to get so fruitful? Well, it just stayed planted. That's all. It just stayed planted, and the one who planted it nurtured it. It just stayed planted and nurtured, and it just had that life on the inside that just produced it in time. Over time. The fruit came out naturally in the process of time. Now, James tells us, and Paul here also tells us, what we can do. See, we do have a part to play in the Christian life. That is to believe. And here specifically he says, look at it. Look at it and keep looking at it. He that looks and continues therein. Now, before we look a little bit, I want to give you the same truth in slightly different words from the mouth of Jesus. We've heard from James. We've heard from Paul. Now go to John's Gospel, chapter 8. Here's a nice little thing Jesus had to say that says essentially the same thing, but just in a little different words. Remember, James said, whoever looks and continues therein. Now here's what Jesus said. Verse 30. John chapter 8, verse 30. As he spoke these words, many believed on him. Well, that's like us, isn't it? We're believers also. So now he's speaking to those that believe on him, verse 31. We can say he's speaking this to us as well, to believers. Verse 31. Then said Jesus to those Jews which believed on him. And by the way, the reason it says Jews is that's basically all that were his hearers at that time. But it also applies to us who believe on him.